So you have data over here, but you need to get it to Genera over here. How do you do that? Well, in the context of a CSV into Genera, we have a trick little method that'll show you how to get that data from a CSV into Genera variable table. Coming up on this episode of Genera Gems. Here we are again, another episode of Genera Gems, and this one's a real treat because we're talking about data transfer into Genera from a CSV file. And this is pretty little slick way to get it done, isn't it, Igor?
Very much so.
So what we're going to do, is we're going to demonstrate how you can use an external CSV and pull the information off of it and put it into Genera variable tables for use inside a process. So Igor, why don't you just show us how this works?
Yeah, that's going to be fairly straightforward, but it's still useful to show in case, the format, how you should format the CSV and how
Correct.
it actually gets imported into Genera is very important. And,
Correct.
Genera likes it a certain way. So what we're going to do is, instead of starting in our editor, we're going to look at documentation first. And that is going to be found in our information tab, activities, and under our general section here, we have set variables from CSV. So if we click that, we can see a little description on what this program does. So we can see that it parses a CSV file and sets values in the variable table. The header of each row should be a variable name. And then for batch variables, there should be a data row for each batch in the process. And for non-batch variables, there should be a single data row.
Yeah,
so
it's
this
important.
is how it should be formatted.
Exactly. And then the second sentence in that statement, the header row of each row, the header of each row should be a variable name. They have to match identical, or it can't tie that particular row or column to the variable. So make sure that your variable name and your header are exactly the same.
But what's nice is that you could set multiple variables for one CSV. So
absolutely.
It doesn't specify just one. It's just you just need to match the header row to the variable name, but you could have multiple of them.
Yeah, you could take it all the way out to AA, double Z, and the rows of a CSV file. And as long as you had that many variables, I think that's a little overkill, but
a little bit.
Yeah, you could definitely do it as long as they match up.
Okay, so let's get right to our activity node. So as we can see, we have our set variables from CSV. And if we were to drag this into our process, we have just one method here, and then all it needs is a CSV file. So the CSV file I'm going to use is this one right here. I'm going to drag this in. As we can see that we have our headers, which I just have labware barcode and volume, and we have 8 rows after that. So I'm going to set a batch of 8, and it should populate, batch 1 with the first row after the header, and batch 2, and so forth. And actually, let me add this in first. Go to browse, and then let me browse for this.
Another thing you could do here, just keep going the way you are, Igor, but another way you could direct the user to select the CSV file is to use this or the CSV selection in a parameter variable where they'll do the search when they start the process, not in the context of this, because somebody may come with a different CSV file and they want to select that from some sort of shared folder or what may be the case of that's their unique something. So you could do it in that context as well.
It's actually a great idea, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Oh, here we go.
Show off some more variables. So actually, my variable table is empty, so let's fill this up. So I have a header column, which is my labware barcode, as we saw. And this is just going to be a string. I'm going to add this in. And then I could add in, actually, I need to make this batched because I have multiple rows. Or if I just had one row, then it could be unbatched. And then let me do my volume. So as I said, just to show you this again, this is the CSV I'm going based off of. So just labware barcode and volume.
And your volume needs to be batched too, doesn't it?
Yes, volume needs to be batched, and I can make this either a string or I can make this into an integer. So either one is fine. So this one, in this case, I'm going to do a string. So I'm going to call this batched, and call that. And then for the last one, we're going to call this our CSV file. And this one, we're not going to do a string. We're actually going to do a file path. And we could give it a default file path, actually. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to browse to it. Is right there. And then this one does not need to be a batch, but it does need to be a parameter.
Correct.
So that if another user wants to come up and use a different CSV file, they can. So I'm going to add this in, and then that should be good to go. So now if I was to drag in my set variables from CSV file, instead of choosing a value, I could choose a variable, and I could use my CSV file variable.
There you go. So now no one has to go into the parameters of that node that he just dragged in, and it will be set at schedule time as defined by the user.
Set variables from CS. I'll explain why this needs to be a handler. Go browse to it. So the reason why this has to be a handler is if it's in a batch and I set the batch count to 8, then it's going to run that program 8 times, which is kind of redundant because I just want to set it once in the beginning and then use those values throughout my process.
Yeah.
So as a result, what we want to do is we want to put it as a start handler so that when the process starts, the handle will only run once no matter how many batches you input. And then I could use those 8 plates for whatever processing or those 8 batches.
So this will essentially take data that I said was over here to get it into Genera. It'll get it and then push it into, and then now it's got a hold of all of it one time.
Exactly.
So you don't
One
have to
time.
cycle through one pass through.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to click OK there. We're just going to delete this here. Save. And let's schedule this just to ensure that it populates the barcodes or the variables. Next. And so here we can see that I have my CSV file. So I have my default value, which is the CSV that I showed, but I can also browse for another one if I wanted to. So if there's multiple users, as I said, they could select a different CSV file.
But those
So
headers
are
must
important.
be the same.
I'm going to click finish. So it's finished. And to double check whether the variables have been populated, we can see our set variables from CSV file process task. That's finished. If we go into the variables tab, we could drop down the labware barcode, and we can see that it matches the barcodes that are in my CSV file, and we can see that the volumes is also matched.
Very nice.
Which is
Very
exactly what we
nice.
want. And
So
the order matters as well.
Yes.
So it'll always do the first row after the header will be batch 1.
Yeah, and if you had a batch of, I don't know, let's say you do have 8 here, but if you had a batch launch of 12, 4 of those would not have barcodes because it's not on the list. The thing will only process as many times as the batch count will allow. So in this case, it was 8. It will grab the 8. Everything's populated. But again, if you have not enough data in your CSV with more batch counts, it's going to miss some data because it's just not there.
So you just need to go back to your CSV, add more data to it, and then you should be good to go.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, and so now let's combine this with our another activity node. So before I do that, just to set the stage a little bit. So right now I'm Hotel 1, and so it should be displaying all my barcodes. So we can see that the plates in Hotel 1 don't have any barcodes. So we're going to go back to our editor. So we have our set variables from CSV in our handler, and we're going to add this set barcode activity node, and we're going to set it based off the CSV file. Oh no, not the CSV file. That's the labware barcode variable. And so if I was to add this in, and then what we also need to do is we need to add a labware node. So we're going to put the location as my hotel ready soft 1 and our microplate. And another place where you can actually use this labware is in our labware criteria, where we have this barcode here, and we could set it to the labware barcode variable. So now what this will do is for our barcode 1, for example. So I'm just going to leave this off for now, but just to show you how this works, that it'll look for batch 1, for example. It'll look for this barcode and ensure that a plate with this barcode is there, and then it'll run with that plate. So
And
it's just
only
a good
that
way,
plate.
and only that plate. So it's just a good like check, or like a QC check, to make sure that you're running the right plate in the right batch. So batch 1 will have to have this barcode for it to run. But in this case, they're not pre-populated, so it doesn't make sense in this scenario. But if you ever have a scenario where it does, then that's how you do that. So let's run this. Oh, batch of 8. And then let's finish. And we can see that all 8 plates have been populated with barcodes.
Nice. Nice. So from the CSV file, you've basically said, yeah, that's my data. And wherever you generate your CSV file, whether it's through some LIMS system or some artificial intelligence engine that you guys utilize, doesn't matter. The fact is you have that data and you want to get it into Genera. This is a real quick, easy way to do it in the simplest format, CSV, that allows you to do that. So if your data is correct, you can bring it into Genera just using this program. So that will do it for this episode of getting data from outside, bringing it into Genera in a one-time shot, and attaching that to your labware. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you on the next one.